Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Welcome to Halal Talks. Long before empires rose and fell across history,
there existed a nation whose life seemed almost untouched by hardship. In the southern lands of Arabia, where deserts usually symbolize struggle and survival, there stood a civilization that appeared to defy nature itself. This was the nation of Saba, a people whose story Allah Himself preserved in the Qur'an, and as both a reminder and a warning. Imagine a land where greenery stretched across valleys instead of endless sand. Gardens grew on both sides of the roads, heavy with fruits and shade. Travelers could walk for miles without carrying provisions because sustenance surrounded them everywhere. Hunger was rare, fear was distant, stability was normal. Their homeland was described not merely as prosperous, but as a good land, blessed by a Lord who continuously forgave and provided. The people of Saba lived in what many would consider a paradise on earth. Rainwater did not go to waste. It was captured, directed, and preserved through one of the most advanced engineering achievements of the ancient world, a massive dam that controlled floods and nourished vast agricultural fields. Through this system, barren land transformed into flourishing gardens, crops grew consistently, seasons remained predictable, and wealth flowed naturally into their society. Caravans traveling between distant civilizations passed safely through their territory. Trade routes connected them to powerful kingdoms, bringing spices, goods, and prosperity. Their cities became symbols of order and success. Unlike many nations constantly threatened by famine or war, Saba enjoyed comfort generation after generation. Children grew up without knowing desperation, and families expected abundance as a normal part of life. Yet within this beauty lay a silent test, because blessings, when repeated long enough, begin to feel ordinary. What once inspired gratitude slowly becomes expectation. The extraordinary becomes routine, and the heart forgets the source of its comfort. Allah did not describe their land only to praise it. The Qur'anic narration introduces their prosperity as the beginning of a deeper lesson, a lesson about how nations change, not when resources disappear, but when hearts transform. The story of Saba is not simply about a civilization that existed long ago. It is about the fragile relationship between human gratitude and divine favor. At the height of their success, nothing outwardly suggested collapse. Their economy thrived, their environment supported them, and their society appeared secure. If an observer had visited Saba at that moment, destruction would have seemed impossible. How could a nation so organized, so blessed, and so stable ever fall? This question forms the mystery at the center of their story. History often teaches that civilizations are destroyed by enemies, disasters, or economic failure. But the Qur'an presents a different reality. Sometimes destruction begins invisibly, growing inside the human heart long before it appears in the physical world. The nation of Saba stood at the peak of blessing, unaware that their greatest danger was not drought, invasion, or poverty. Their greatest danger was forgetting why they were blessed in the first place, and this is where their story truly begins. To understand why the fall of Saba became such a powerful lesson in the Qur'an, we must first understand how extraordinary their civilization truly was. The greatness of their blessings was not small or ordinary. It was the kind of prosperity that entire nations throughout history could only dream of. The people of Saba lived in the southern region of the Arabian Peninsula, in an area that today is associated with the land of Yemen. While much of Arabia was known for harsh deserts and difficult living conditions, the homeland of Saba was strikingly different. It was a valley rich with fertile soil, natural resources, and a climate that allowed agriculture to flourish in a way rarely seen in that part of the world. But their success was not based only on natural advantages. The people of Saba possessed remarkable intelligence and engineering skills. They built one of the greatest technological achievements of the ancient world, a massive dam designed to control and distribute water across their lands. This structure allowed them to store rainwater and direct it into irrigation channels that fed their farms and gardens. Because of this system, water flowed where it was needed most. Fields remained fertile. Crops grew season after season. Trees produced fruits in abundance. The land became so productive that entire valleys turned into vast gardens. The Qur'an describes this blessing with powerful imagery. Allah mentions that the people of Saba had gardens on both the right and the left of their homes. Everywhere they looked, they were surrounded by greenery, shade, and nourishment. The land itself seemed to serve them. Their agricultural wealth quickly transformed into economic power. Saba became a central hub of international trade. Their location placed them directly on the routes connecting powerful civilizations such as those of the north and east. Caravans carrying valuable goods, spices, incense, textiles, and precious materials passed through their territory regularly. These trade routes brought immense wealth into their cities. Markets flourished. Craftsmen, merchants, and travelers filled the streets. Their society grew organized and prosperous. Unlike many tribes that struggled for survival, the people of Saba built a structured civilization, supported by both agriculture and commerce. Even travel across their region became unusually safe and easy. The Quran mentions that villages were placed close to one another, allowing travelers to move from town to town without fear or difficulty. A person could travel long distances without feeling isolated or threatened. In a time when journeys across deserts often meant danger, thirst, and uncertainty, Saba offered something rare: security. Imagine living in a society where food was abundant, trade was thriving, roads were safe, and the environment supported life generously. There were no constant worries about famine, no daily fear of survival. Generation after generation grew up in comfort and stability. And above all these blessings stood a simple message from Allah: enjoy what has been given to you and remain grateful. Their prosperity was not accidental. It was a gift, a test, a trust placed upon them by their Creator, because every blessing carries with it a responsibility. The wealth of Saba was meant to lead them toward gratitude, humility, and remembrance of Allah. Their thriving land was supposed to strengthen their faith, not weaken it. The beauty surrounding them was meant to remind them of the one who created it. For a time, this balance remained. The blessings continued to flow. The civilization expanded. Their fame spread across regions. But slowly, something began to change. When comfort lasts for too long, the human heart sometimes forgets the struggle that once taught it humility. Gratitude fades quietly, almost unnoticed. What was once seen as a miracle begins to feel like a normal rite. And this quiet transformation would eventually become the beginning of Saba's downfall. For a long time, the people of Saba lived in comfort so consistent that hardship became unfamiliar to them. Generations were born into prosperity, grew up surrounded by green gardens, and died without ever experiencing famine or fear. Their cities flourished, trade expanded, and travelers admired their civilization. What once began as a blessing slowly transformed into a test of gratitude. Allah had not only given them wealth, but also guidance. Prophets and reminders came to teach them that prosperity was not permanent and that every blessing required thankfulness. Gratitude in Islam is not only words spoken by the tongue. It is obedience, humility, and recognition that success comes from Allah alone. But as time passed, comfort weakened their sense of dependence upon their Creator. Instead of gratitude, pride began to grow. The people of Saba started to believe that their success was the result of their own intelligence and engineering. The massive dam that controlled the waters became a symbol, not of Allah's mercy, but of human achievement. They admired their own power more than the one who granted it. This psychological shift marked the beginning of their downfall. When blessings become normal, hearts often forget their source. The Qur'an repeatedly shows this pattern. Nations are destroyed, not simply because they possessed wealth, but because wealth made them arrogant. The people of Saba gradually ignored divine guidance, turning away from worship and becoming absorbed in luxury and ease. Their prayers decreased, their humility disappeared, gratitude turned into entitlement. They even began to complain about the very blessings meant to make life easy. The Quran mentions how they asked for longer distances between towns, rejecting the convenience Allah had provided. What had once been a mercy became something they no longer valued. This complaint revealed a deeper spiritual illness. Instead of seeing blessings as signs of mercy, they treated them as ordinary rights. When humans stop recognizing blessings, they unknowingly invite their loss. The people of Saba did not realize that every comfort surrounding them depended entirely on Allah's will. The dam still stood strong, the garden still bloomed, trade still prospered. But spiritually, collapse had already begun. Allah allows nations time to return. Warnings come gradually, not suddenly. The people of Saba were given opportunities to repent, to remember, and to restore gratitude. Yet arrogance makes repentance difficult because pride convinces people that nothing is wrong. Their society appeared powerful from the outside, but internally it had become disconnected from faith. History shows that destruction rarely begins with physical disasters. It begins with moral decay. When hearts turn away from guidance, the external collapse eventually follows. The story of Saba teaches that the greatest danger is not poverty or weakness, but forgetting Allah during times of success. And so, while their cities still shone with beauty, an unseen countdown had already begun. A moment when the blessings they took for granted would be removed, and the nation that once lived in paradise would face consequences they never imagined. For generations, the great dam of Saba stood as the heart of their civilization. It controlled powerful floods, distributed water equally, and transformed dry land into flourishing gardens. To the people, it seemed permanent, an unbreakable structure symbolizing stability and security. But they forgot a truth repeated throughout the Qur'an: what Allah sustains can disappear in a single moment. The warning did not arrive suddenly without meaning. Allah does not punish without signs. Small changes likely appeared first, weaknesses unnoticed, warnings ignored, reminders unheeded. Yet arrogance blinds nations from recognizing danger until it becomes unavoidable. Then came the moment history would never forget. The Qur'an describes the event as Sayl al Arim, the devastating flood that destroyed everything. The dam that once protected them collapsed, releasing uncontrollable waters. The same water that had been a mercy now became a force of destruction. Gardens were swallowed, fields were ruined, homes were overwhelmed. In a short time, prosperity turned into chaos. The transformation was shocking because it reversed everything they believed was secure. Their fertile lands became barren. Beautiful orchards were replaced with bitter plants and thorny trees. The environment itself changed, reflecting the spiritual condition of the people. This was not merely a natural disaster, it was a divine lesson. Allah shows through history that blessings are not guaranteed forever. When gratitude disappears, protection can also disappear. The people of Saba had trusted their engineering more than their creator, but human strength could not stop divine decree. Imagine the fear that spread among them. The structure they depended on had failed. The system that defined their civilization no longer existed. Trade routes collapsed, food sources vanished, and stability turned into uncertainty overnight. The psychological shock was greater than the physical loss. People who once lived in ease now faced survival. Those who felt powerful realize their helplessness. In moments like these, humans recognize how fragile worldly success truly is. The Qur'an emphasizes that their destruction was not total annihilation immediately. Instead, Allah transformed their blessings into hardship so that future generations would reflect. Their story became a warning preserved for humanity. Prosperity without gratitude leads to loss. What makes this event powerful is its symbolism. Water represents life, mercy, and sustenance. Yet the same water became punishment. This contrast teaches that blessings themselves are neutral. Their impact depends on human response to Allah. The fall of the dam marked more than the end of an engineering marvel. It marked the end of arrogance. Civilizations often believe they will last forever, but history repeatedly proves otherwise. Strength, technology, and wealth cannot replace obedience and humility before Allah. As the floodwaters settled, the people of Saba faced a new reality, one where their paradise had vanished and the consequences of their choices became impossible to ignore. And what followed next would change their identity forever, scattering a once united nation across distant lands, turning a powerful civilization into a lesson remembered until the Day of Judgment. The destruction of the nation of Saba was not only a historical event, it was a living lesson, preserved in the Qur'an and for every generation that would come after them. Allah did not narrate their story merely to describe the fall of an ancient civilization, but to warn humanity about a pattern that repeats throughout history. Saba was not destroyed because they were weak. They were destroyed when strength made them forget gratitude. At first, blessings brought them closer to comfort. Then comfort slowly turned into pride. Pride led to negligence, and negligence eventually became rejection of guidance. This gradual spiritual decline is important to understand because it shows that destruction does not begin suddenly. It begins quietly inside the heart. The people of Saba stopped seeing their blessings as gifts from Allah. Instead, they viewed prosperity as something they deserved. When gratitude disappears, blessings lose their protection. Wealth without thankfulness becomes a test rather than a reward. Their famous gardens symbolized beauty and balance, yet those same gardens later became signs of loss. When the dam collapsed, fertile land turned barren. Sweet fruits disappeared, replaced by bitter plants and thorny trees. The transformation was not random. It reflected the change within the people themselves. The Qur'an highlights this contrast to teach a powerful truth. External conditions often mirror internal states. When hearts become ungrateful, even the most stable systems can collapse. Another lesson lies in how Allah replaced them. After their destruction, the people of Saba were scattered across different lands. Their unity disappeared. A once great nation became divided communities struggling to survive. History remembers them not for their power, but for their downfall. This teaches that civilizations are not preserved by technology, wealth, or infrastructure alone. True stability comes from moral responsibility and remembrance of Allah. The story also warns against taking divine patience as approval. Allah gave Saba many chances. Prophets advised them. Signs surrounded them. Time was granted for reflection and repentance. But when warnings are ignored repeatedly, accountability eventually arrives. For modern audiences, the story feels deeply relevant. Today, humanity also lives in an age of extraordinary comfort and technological advancement. Cities grow larger, resources expand, and people feel increasingly secure in human achievement. Yet the story of Saba reminds us that material progress cannot replace spiritual awareness. One moment of divine command was enough to undo generations of engineering and prosperity. This realization shifts the focus from fear to reflection. The purpose of such stories is not to create despair, but to awaken consciousness. Allah's warnings are acts of mercy, giving people the chance to change before consequences arrive. The fall of Saba teaches three enduring lessons. First, gratitude protects blessings. Second, arrogance invites loss. Third, remembrance of Allah sustains both individuals and societies. These lessons transform the story from ancient history into a timeless mirror. Every listener is invited to ask, are we using blessings to grow closer to Allah, or are we slowly repeating the mistakes of those before us? The Qur'an and preserves the memory of Saba so that their destruction becomes guidance rather than tragedy alone. Their story continues to speak across centuries, reminding humanity that true success is not measured by how much a nation possesses, but by how sincerely it remains grateful to the one who provides everything. And in that reminder lies the real purpose of their story, not simply to remember what happened to them, but to prevent the same fate from happening again. After the devastating flood destroyed their dam and ruined their fertile gardens, the nation of Saba faced a reality they had never imagined. The land that once supported their entire civilization could no longer sustain them. Water that once nourished their farms had swept away the very system that made their prosperity possible. Without the dam, the delicate balance of their environment collapsed. The irrigation channels dried or became uncontrollable. Fields that once produced abundant crops turned into harsh soil. The famous orchards that stretched across valleys disappeared. Where there had once been greenery and shade, there were now thorny plants and bitter trees. Life in Saba quickly became difficult. Food shortages began to spread. Trade routes that depended on their stable cities weakened. Merchants avoided the region because the prosperity that once attracted travelers was gone. A land that had once been a symbol of comfort slowly transformed into a place of hardship. Families who had lived there for generations were forced to make a painful decision: stay and struggle in a ruined land or leave in search of survival. Many chose to leave. The Qur'an mentions that the people of Saba were scattered and dispersed. Their once united nation broke apart into different tribes and communities, traveling across the Arabian Peninsula and beyond. Some migrated north, some moved east, and others settled in distant regions where new opportunities could be found. This migration changed their identity forever. A civilization that once stood strong together now existed as scattered groups spread across unfamiliar lands. Their cities faded into ruins, and their powerful kingdom became a memory preserved in stories and warnings. History remembers them not only for their prosperity, but also for how quickly it disappeared. The scattering of the people carried another lesson. When societies lose their spiritual foundation, unity often disappears as well. Faith and gratitude had once connected the people of Saba under a shared sense of blessing. But when arrogance replaced gratitude, that unity slowly weakened. After the disaster, the social bonds that held them together could not survive the pressure of hardship. Each group searched for safety on its own. For future generations, the story of Saba became an example often repeated among the Arabs. Travelers passing through the region would hear stories of a great civilization that once controlled the land. They would see remnants of ancient structures and wonder how such a powerful nation had vanished. The answer lay not only in the flood, but in the spiritual choices that came before it. Allah preserved their story in the Qur'an so that it would never be forgotten. Their destruction became a sign, a reminder that blessings must be protected with gratitude and humility. The scattered descendants of Saba continued to live in different parts of the world, but the glory of their original kingdom never returned. Their rise had been remarkable, but their fall was even more instructive. And this is the deeper wisdom behind their story. Civilizations do not collapse only because of disasters. Disasters often reveal weaknesses that already exist within societies. When hearts forget Allah, The systems built by human hands eventually lose their protection. The nation of Saba once believed their prosperity would last forever. Their gardens, their dam, and their wealth seemed permanent. Yet history shows how quickly those things can disappear. Today, their story remains alive not through their cities or monuments, but through the message Allah preserved for humanity, that gratitude sustains blessings, while arrogance can turn even the greatest prosperity into a lesson remembered for generations. The story of the nation of Saba is not simply about an ancient flood or the collapse of a dam. At its heart lies a much deeper question. Why would Allah allow such a prosperous civilization to fall? The Qur'an makes it clear that their destruction was not random, nor was it merely a natural disaster. It was the result of a spiritual law that applies to every nation throughout history. The people of Saba were blessed beyond imagination. They had fertile land, thriving trade, safety, and technological advancement. Yet these blessings came with a responsibility to remain grateful to Allah and to live according to His guidance. When blessings are met with gratitude, they grow stronger. But when blessings are met with arrogance, they begin to disappear. This is exactly what happened to Saba. The Qur'an explains that the people turned away from the message sent to them. Instead of recognizing the mercy behind their prosperity, they ignored it. Their wealth made them feel independent. Their advanced engineering made them believe they controlled their destiny. Slowly, their hearts drifted away from gratitude and humility. El-Dayas' warning appears clearly in the Qur'an. When a nation rejects blessings and becomes ungrateful, those blessings can be replaced. The gardens of Saba, once filled with sweet fruits and shade, were replaced with bitter plants and thorny trees. What had once been a paradise became a land of hardship. This transformation teaches a powerful principle. Allah does not remove blessings suddenly without reason. Changes happen when people themselves change. When gratitude disappears, the protection surrounding blessings weakens. The people of Saba believed their strength came from their dam, their agriculture, and their trade. But the Qur'an reminds us that true security comes only from Allah. Another important lesson from their destruction is collective responsibility. It was not only a few individuals who turned away. The entire society gradually accepted arrogance and neglect. When corruption becomes normal in a society, the consequences eventually affect everyone. This pattern has appeared many times in human history. Nations rise when they combine strength with moral responsibility. But when power leads to pride and injustice, decline begins even if prosperity still appears on the surface. The story of Saba demonstrates that spiritual decay often comes before physical collapse. For years, their civilization looked strong. Their cities were still standing. Their trade routes were active. Their dam remained intact. Yet internally, something had already begun to break. The connection between the people and their creator had weakened. Once that connection was lost, the systems they depended on could no longer protect them. This is why the Qur'an preserves their story not just as history, but as guidance. Every generation can see itself reflected in Saba. Modern societies today also enjoy remarkable comfort, technology, and security. Just like Saba, many people feel that human progress alone guarantees stability. But the lesson of Saba challenges this assumption. It reminds us that blessings are not permanent guarantees. They are trusts from Allah. The continuation of those blessings depends on gratitude, humility, and obedience. The fall of Saba therefore serves as a warning and a mercy at the same time. It warns humanity about the danger of arrogance, while also inviting reflection before the same mistakes are repeated. Because the real question is not only why Saba was destroyed. The real question is whether future nations will learn from their story or ignore it until history repeats itself again. The story of the nation of Saba is not preserved in the Qur'an. and merely as a tale from the past. It is a warning that stretches across centuries, speaking directly to every generation that comes after them. When we look closely, the fall of Saba does not feel like a distant event. In many ways, the conditions that existed in their society resemble the world we live in today. Like the people of Saba, modern societies enjoy levels of comfort and technology that previous generations could barely imagine. Cities are larger, transportation is faster, and systems of engineering control water, food production, and energy on a massive scale. Humanity has built dams, skyscrapers, highways, and global trade networks that connect continents. From the outside, modern civilization appears powerful and stable. But the story of Saba reminds us that material strength alone does not guarantee permanence. The people of Saba also believed their systems would last forever. Their dam was considered one of the greatest engineering achievements of its time. Their agriculture supported an entire kingdom. Their trade routes brought wealth from distant lands. Yet, all of it disappeared in a single turning point. The lesson here is not meant to create fear, but awareness. Allah shows through history that blessings are always connected to responsibility. Prosperity is not simply a reward, it is also a test of character. How people respond to their blessings determines whether those blessings continue or disappear. The people of Saba failed this test because they stopped recognizing the source of their success. Gratitude was replaced by pride. Comfort made them forget dependence upon Allah. Eventually, their civilization collapsed, not only because of a flood, but because their hearts had already drifted away from remembrance. This pattern can repeat in any era. Today, many people feel secure because of technology, wealth, and global systems. Human achievement is often celebrated as the ultimate source of progress. While these accomplishments are impressive, the story of Saba reminds us that human effort alone cannot protect a society from decline. True stability requires something deeper, humility before the Creator. When societies maintain gratitude, justice, and moral responsibility, blessings become a source of growth. But when arrogance replaces gratitude, the very systems people rely on can become fragile. The story of Saba also highlights another important lesson. Decline does not begin with disasters. It begins with small changes in attitude. When people become careless about faith, when gratitude becomes rare, and when worldly success replaces spiritual awareness, the foundation of society slowly weakens. Often, these changes are invisible at first. Cities remain busy. Economies continue to grow, technology advances, everything appears normal on the surface. Yet internally, the moral strength that sustains a civilization may already be fading. The Qur'an invites every listener to reflect on this reality. The story of Saba is not meant to judge past nations alone, it is meant to inspire self-reflection in the present. Are we grateful for the blessings we enjoy today? Do we remember the one who provides them? Do our societies value humility, justice, and faith? These questions are the real purpose of the story. Because the fall of Saba was not preserved so that people would simply remember a destroyed kingdom. It was preserved so that future generations might recognize the warning before it becomes their own reality. And in that warning lies a powerful mercy, the opportunity to choose gratitude before blessings are lost. The story of the nation of Saba begins with beauty, prosperity, and extraordinary blessings. It begins with gardens stretching across valleys, safe roads connecting thriving cities, and a people who lived in comfort that many others could only dream about. Their land was described as good, their resources were abundant, and their civilization stood as one of the most advanced societies of its time. Yet the same story that begins with paradise ends with warning. The gardens disappeared, the great dam collapsed, a powerful nation scattered into distant lands. What once symbolized stability became a lesson remembered for generations. But the most important part of this story is not the flood, the dam, or even the destruction itself. The most important part is what happened before all of that. The fall of Saba began long before the water rushed through their valley. It began when gratitude slowly disappeared from their hearts. When blessings became normal, they stopped recognizing them as gifts from Allah. Comfort turned into pride, and pride turned into negligence. This transformation is the real message preserved in the Qur'an, because civilizations rarely collapse overnight. The visible disaster is usually the final chapter of a much longer story. Long before physical systems break down, spiritual foundations begin to weaken. When people forget Allah during times of prosperity, the blessings that once protected them lose their purpose. The people of Saba believed their strength came from their dam, their trade, and their fertile land. But history proved that these things alone could not guarantee security. In a single moment, everything they depended on disappeared. And yet, within this warning lies an incredible mercy. Allah did not preserve their story to create fear or despair. He preserved it to guide future generations. The destruction of Saba became a sign so that others might recognize the danger of arrogance before it reaches the same conclusion. Their story teaches that blessings are not permanent guarantees. They are trusts from Allah, given so that people may show gratitude, humility, and obedience. When those qualities remain strong, blessings grow and societies flourish. But when pride replaces gratitude, even the most powerful civilizations can decline. This is why the Quran repeatedly invites people to reflect on the nations that came before. Their stories act like mirrors, allowing every generation to examine itself. The purpose is not only to remember what happened long ago, but to ask a deeper question in the present. Are we grateful for the blessings we have today? Do we remember the one who provides them? Or are we slowly repeating the same mistakes that once led an entire civilization to ruin? The story of Saba continues to speak across centuries because its lesson is timeless. Wealth can vanish, power can fade, and technology can fail. But gratitude toward Allah is a protection that no disaster can destroy. And in the end, that may be the greatest message hidden within their story. The true success is not measured by how much a nation possesses, but by how sincerely it remains thankful to the one who gave it everything. Subscribe to the channel now so you do not miss the upcoming videos. We ask for your du'as as we are going through difficult days. We especially need your prayers so that these videos can continue. See you in the next video. May Allah be pleased with you all.